My girlfriend and brother broke into my apartment looking for lottery ticket. You know that feeling when everyone in your life looks at you like you're the participation trophy kid? Yeah, that's me. Evan Miller, 29 years old, professional disappointment to the Miller family of suburban Ohio. Let me paint you a picture. Every night from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., I'm at the FedEx hub sorting packages. The kind of job where you develop a sixth sense for fragile stickers and learn that people ship the weirdest stuff at 3 in the morning. During the day, when normal people are sitting in offices pretending to look busy on spreadsheets, I'm driving around in my beat-up 2004 Ford Ranger, fixing whatever breaks in a 30-mile radius. Leaky faucets, busted AC units. That weird noise your car makes only on Tuesdays. People say I've got golden hands. My family says I've got no ambition. Funny how the same thing looks different depending on where you're standing. My grandpa used to tell me something that stuck. We'd be in his garage, him teaching me how to rebuild a carburetor or fix a radio from the 60s, and he'd look at me with those gray eyes that had seen 3 wars and say that real character is what you do when nobody's watching. Back then, I thought it was just one of those things old people say, like how bread used to cost a nickel or how kids these days don't know real music. But lately, those words keep bouncing around my head like a pinball that won't drain. Speaking of things people do when they think nobody's watching, I had to install a Ring camera by my door last month. Funny story, actually. Not haha funny, more like crying into your beer funny. My best socket set started disappearing piece by piece. First a 10 millimeter, which, let's be honest, those things have their own Bermuda Triangle. But then the half-inch, the extensions, even my torque wrench. The timing was suspicious. It matched up perfectly with my brother Kyle's visits. You know, Kyle, the family golden boy who sells houses to people who can't really afford them and wears suits that cost more than I make in a month. Kyle's 32, got his real estate license right out of college, and now he's got his face on bus benches all over town with that fake smile that says, "Trust me," while his eyes calculate your net worth. Our parents look at him like he's their retirement plan, walking around in Italian leather shoes. Me? I'm the backup plan, the one they call when the garbage disposal backs up or when they need someone to move furniture. Then there's Brittany. We've been together 3 years, or at least that's what I tell myself. Lately, she's been having these career planning sessions with Kyle. Says he's helping her understand investments and market opportunities. Last week she asked me if I'd ever thought about getting a real job. When I told her I have 2 real jobs, she rolled her eyes and said I knew what she meant. Yeah, I knew exactly what she meant. The 4th of July barbecue at my parents' house was when things really crystallized for me. Picture this. Perfect suburban backyard. Those string lights everyone bought during the lockdowns. Smell of burgers on the grill mixing with fresh-cut grass. Dad standing there with his beer raised, giving one of his speeches. He loves his speeches. Goes on about how Kyle just helped him refinance the house. Save him $300 a month. How good it is to have someone in the family who understands money. Then he turns to me, slaps my shoulder hard enough to spill my drink, and says at least we got one son who's good with his hands, right? Won't ever have to pay for repairs. Everyone laughed. That kind of uncomfortable laugh that happens when someone says something that's supposed to be funny, but isn't. I caught Brittany looking at me with this expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger or disappointment. It was pity. Pure, undiluted pity. Like she was looking at a 3-legged dog trying to fetch. That look hit harder than any insult ever could. 3 days later, I'm on my break at FedEx, sitting in the parking lot at 2:30 a.m., scrolling through Instagram because apparently I'm a masochist. There it is. Photo of Brittany and Kyle at some rooftop bar downtown. She's wearing that black dress I bought her for her birthday. He's got his arm around her shoulder, both of them holding those ridiculous $15 cocktails that come with smoke or foam, or whatever they're putting in drinks now. The caption reads, "Amazing evening with someone who knows their worth." My phone felt like ice in my hand. You ever have one of those moments where everything just clicks? Like you've been looking at one of those magic eye pictures for hours, and suddenly you see the dolphin? That was it for me. All those late meetings about her career. All those times Kyle just happened to stop by when I was at work. The way she'd been pushing me to be more like him. The picture wasn't just worth 1,000 words. It was worth 3 years of my life. But here's the thing about working nights and doing handyman work during the day. You see the world differently. You see the single mom at 3 a.m. buying diapers with change she counted 3 times. You see the old man whose kids never visit, pretending his sink is broken just so someone will talk to him for an hour. You see America when it's tired, when it's real, when it can't afford to pretend everything's Instagram perfect. 2 nights after that photo, I'm driving home on US 35. Storm rolling in like God's own fury. Rain coming down so hard my wipers can't keep up. Lightning turning the sky purple every few seconds. That's when I see it. Old Buick LeSabre on the shoulder. Hazards blinking like a disco ball having a panic attack. I pull over because that's what you do. That's what Grandpa would do. Inside the car is Mrs. Whitaker, probably 70-something, gripping the steering wheel like it might fly away. She's trying not to cry, but failing. Tells me her granddaughter is having emergency surgery in Cincinnati. Something about appendicitis that went bad. She was rushing to the hospital when the tire blew. No self-service, no AAA, just her in the storm and a flat tire. I've changed plenty of tires, but never in rain that felt like standing under a waterfall. The lug nuts were rusted on tight. Probably hadn't been touched since the car rolled off the lot sometime in the last century. My clothes were soaked through in seconds. Water in my eyes, my ears, running down my back. The jack kept slipping on the wet asphalt. Took me 40 minutes to do a 10-minute job. When I finished, Mrs. Whitaker tried to give me money. Pulled out this envelope from her purse. Hands shaking. I told her no, just get to her granddaughter safe. She looked at me funny then, like she was trying to memorize my face. Asked for my name. I told her, then watched her taillights disappear into the storm. I sat in my truck for a minute, heater blasting, trying to warm up. That's when I noticed she'd pulled into the gas station up ahead. 5 minutes later, this kid who works there, Tommy, walks up to my window. He's holding an envelope, same one Mrs. Whitaker tried to give me. Says she bought something and wanted him to make sure I got it. Said to tell me it was thanks for reminding her there are still good people out there. I was too tired to argue, too tired to think, the kind of tired that goes past your bones and settles in your soul. I took the envelope and tossed it in my glove compartment with the registration I keep meaning to renew and the insurance cards from 3 years ago. Tommy said something about lottery tickets being hot sellers tonight with the jackpot so high, but I wasn't really listening. My mind was already on my bed, on my pillow, on 8 hours of unconsciousness before I had to do it all over again. The rest of the drive home, I thought about that look on Mrs. Whitaker's face, the relief when I showed up, the gratitude that seemed too big for just changing a tire. It occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, this was what Grandpa meant. Not the big gestures, not the showing off at family barbecues, not the Instagram moments. Just doing what needs doing when nobody's keeping score. I didn't open the envelope that night. Didn't even think about it. Just stumbled into my apartment, peeled off my wet clothes, and collapsed into bed. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany asking if I could look at her car tomorrow. Something about a weird noise. I didn't respond. Let Kyle figure it out. He knows his worth, after all. I collapsed into bed, exhausted down to my bones. One thought kept spinning in my head. Maybe this was what Grandpa meant. Not the big speeches at barbecues, not the Instagram photos, but just doing what needs doing when nobody's watching. Just changing a tire in the rain for a stranger. That thought was all I had. The quiet satisfaction of a deed done in the dark, witnessed only by the storm. I had no clue that in the glove compartment of my beat-up truck lay an envelope with a piece of paper worth more than every house my brother had ever sold combined. But that's another story. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of rain, knowing nothing except that somewhere in Cincinnati, a grandmother had made it to her granddaughter. And that was enough. A week went by. 7 days of the same routine, packages at night, fixing broken things during the day. The envelope stayed in my glove compartment, buried under old receipts and a broken flashlight I kept meaning to fix. Life went on, until it didn't. I was driving to a job, listening to the local AM radio because my FM antenna gave up somewhere around 2019. The DJ was going on about the Powerball winner, how someone in Ohio just became $212 million richer. Said the winning ticket was sold at a Shell station on Route 35. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. That was the station, the one Mrs. Whitaker stopped at. I pulled over so fast the guy behind me laid on his horn for a solid 10 seconds. My hands were shaking like I'd had 12 cups of coffee. Reached into the glove compartment, pushed past all the junk, found the envelope. Inside was a Powerball ticket and a handwritten note on flower border paper. The note said simply that kindness given freely returns tenfold, and she hoped this brought me luck. Downloaded the Ohio Lottery app right there on the shoulder. Cars whizzing by at 70 miles per hour, semi-trucks making my little Ford rock in their wake. Scanned the ticket. The screen went crazy. Confetti animation, flashing colors, and then the words that made my brain short-circuit. Congratulations, you won the jackpot. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes. Just sat, engine running, hazards on, staring at my phone screen like it might suddenly laugh and say it was kidding. A state trooper even stopped to check on me. Told him I was fine, just needed a minute. He gave me that look cops give when they think you're high, but can't prove it. You'd think the first thing going through my mind would be the money, the cars, the house. Quitting both jobs, telling everyone to kiss my blue collar behind. But no, all I could think about was Grandpa's words echoing in my head. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. Well, nobody was watching when I changed that tire. And now, somehow, that invisible moment was worth more money than I could comprehend. The smart thing would have been to call my family. That's what normal people do, right? Share the good news? Pop champagne? But something in my gut, maybe the same instinct that made me install that Ring camera, told me to wait, to think, to be smart about this. Instead, I called in sick to FedEx for the first time in 3 years and drove straight to Columbus. Found a law firm that specialized in lottery winners, Brennan, Associates, and Kowalski. Their website said they'd handled 17 major lottery cases. The receptionist looked at me in my grease-stained jeans and work boots like I'd wandered in by mistake. Change your tune real quick when I showed her the ticket. Mr. Brennan himself, silver-haired guy who probably hadn't pumped his own gas since the 90s, sat me down in a conference room that was worth more than my annual salary. First thing he said wasn't congratulations. It was a question that hit like cold water. He asked me who knew about the win. When I said nobody, he actually smiled, said I was already smarter than 90% of lottery winners. He laid out the plan like a military operation. First, sign the back of the ticket immediately. Done. Second, we create an LLC and a trust, the Mill Creek Trust, named after the creek behind Grandpa's old house. This would claim the prize anonymously. Ohio allows that. Thank God. Third, and this was the hard part, tell absolutely nobody until the money was secured and protected. The whole process would take about 3 weeks. 3 weeks of pretending everything was normal while sitting on a piece of paper worth more than the entire neighborhood I grew up in. Brennan gave me a special safety deposit box at their partner bank. That ticket went in there like it was nuclear launch codes. The drive home was surreal. Every person I passed, every car, every building, I could buy them all. But I couldn't tell anyone. Couldn't even hint at it. I stopped at McDonald's for lunch and almost laughed when I checked my bank balance to make sure I had enough for a Big Mac meal. $432 to my name and $212 million waiting in the wings. Telling my family I'd landed a big job was easier than expected. Said it was a 3-week commercial renovation in Dayton. Had to stay on site. Wouldn't be around much. Mom barely looked up from her iPad. Dad grunted something about it being about time I got serious work. Kyle made some crack about hoping I didn't screw it up. Only Brittany seemed suspicious. Kept asking for details about the contractor, the location, the pay. Those 3 weeks were the longest and shortest of my life. Days, I'd drive to random coffee shops with Wi-Fi, meeting with financial advisors Brennan recommended, learning about tax strategies, investment portfolios, wealth preservation. Stuff that made my head spin. Nights, I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, calculator app open, trying to comprehend what 212 million actually meant. After taxes, it would be about 105 million in a lump sum. 105 million. I calculated I could live on the interest alone. 3 million a year if invested conservatively. 3 million a year without touching the principal. I made $38,000 last year working 2 jobs. The isolation was the hardest part. Couldn't talk to anyone about the earthquake happening in my life. Couldn't share the excitement, the fear, the absolute insanity of it all. Started talking to myself in the truck just to process it out loud. Probably looked like a crazy person at red lights, having full conversations with nobody. Week 2, things got weird at home. Brittany started showing up more often, acting sweet like she did when we first met, bringing me coffee, offering to do my laundry, asking about my day. Kyle suddenly wanted to grab beers, brother to brother. Hadn't done that since high school. Even my parents invited me to dinner twice. The attention felt wrong, like when a cat's too friendly and you know it wants something. Then came the night everything clicked. It was a Tuesday about 9 p.m. Brittany showed up at my apartment unannounced. Said she left her phone charger in my bedroom last week. Needed it urgently. I let her in because, despite everything, I'm not the type to be petty about a charger. She went to the bedroom while I was in the living room, still on a call with Brennan about some final paperwork details. The call was important. We were discussing the final steps for claiming the prize anonymously. I remember saying the exact words clearly because Brennan had me repeat them to confirm I understood. I said yes, I understand the trust will completely protect my anonymity, and no, I haven't told anyone about the windfall. That's when I heard the bedroom door close. Soft, like someone trying not to make noise. When I finished the call and went to check, Brittany was gone. No goodbye, no thanks for the charger, nothing. Her car was already pulling out of the parking lot. At the time, I figured she was just being weird about her situation. Maybe heard me on a business call and felt awkward. I should have known better. Should have remembered that Brittany never did anything without a reason. 2 days later, Thursday evening, I found out exactly what that reason was. Came home from another meeting with the financial advisors to find my entire family in my living room. They'd used the spare key I'd stupidly given my mom for emergencies. Kyle in his suit, even though it was past 7. Parents on my couch looking serious. Brittany in the corner, not quite meeting my eyes. Mom started with the concerned parent routine. Said they were worried about me, that I'd been acting strange, distant. Dad chimed in about how family needs to stick together, support each other. But it was Kyle who cut to the chase. He had this look, like a shark that just smelled blood. Started talking about how if I had come into some money, I needed help managing it. Said I didn't have the experience, the education, the sophistication to handle a windfall. That word, windfall, the exact word I'd used on the phone with Brennan. The pieces fell into place like dominoes. Brittany heard the call. She'd told Kyle. Kyle had rallied the troops. They didn't know how much, but they knew something was up. Kyle pulled out a folder, thick with papers, legal documents, power of attorney forms, financial management agreements, all prepared, all with signature lines highlighted in yellow. He pushed them across my coffee table like he was closing just another real estate deal. Told me it was for my own good, that lottery winners always blow their money, that I needed family to protect me from myself. The worst part? They all nodded along. My own parents, the people who raised me, teaching me right from wrong, sat there nodding while their older son tried to calm their younger one. Brittany finally looked at me then, and there was something in her eyes. Not guilt, anticipation. Like she was waiting to see if I'd roll over like I always had. I picked up the papers. Read them slowly, deliberately. Full financial power of attorney to Kyle. Joint ownership of all assets over $10,000. Irrevocable trust with Kyle as a sole trustee. It was a complete takeover disguised as help. Legal theft wrapped in family concern. The room was so quiet you could hear the neighbors' TV through the walls. They all watched me, waiting for good old Evan to cave. To admit he needed help, to hand over whatever he'd stumbled into because he couldn't possibly handle it himself. The same Evan who'd fixed their cars, their houses, their problems for years without asking for anything in return. I stood up slowly, set the papers back on the table, looked at each of them in turn. My mother, who hadn't missed a single one of Kyle's football games but couldn't remember what I did for a living. My father, who displayed Kyle's real estate awards on a mantle but had never once acknowledged any of my work. Kyle, who'd been stealing my tools and was now trying to steal my future. And Brittany, who'd shared my bed for 3 years but sold me out for the chance at something better. I said 3 words. Just 3. "Thank you, I'll manage." Then I walked to the door and opened it. The message was clear. "Get out." Kyle tried to argue, started raising his voice about family responsibility, about how I was making a huge mistake. Dad stood up, face getting red, began lecturing about respect and gratitude. Mom was crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. Brittany just grabbed her purse and left first. Didn't even pretend to care anymore. They filed out one by one. Kyle last, still clutching his folder papers. He stopped at the door, leaned in close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne, told me this wasn't over, that when I screwed this up, and I would screw it up, not to come crying to them. I told him I'd never cried to them about anything in my life. Wasn't planning to start now. After they left, I deadbolted the door and sat in the dark for a while. The apartment felt different, like something had shifted in the foundations. I just declared war on my own family. They didn't know exactly what I had, but they knew I had something, and they wanted it. The battle lines were drawn. I called Brennan that night, told him about the situation. He wasn't surprised. Said family problems were the #1 issue lottery winners faced, even worse than the financial challenges. He told me to document everything, save any texts or voicemails, consider getting a restraining order if necessary. Then he said something that stuck with me. He said money doesn't change people. It just shows you who they really were all along. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The apartment felt foreign, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. I felt clear. The lawyer was right. Money hadn't changed anyone. It just ripped off the masks. I just declared war on my own family. For days until the trust was finalized. For days until my money became truly mine, anonymous and protected. I looked at my phone, expecting calls or texts, but it stayed silent, and that silence was louder than any screaming match. They'd retreated to regroup. The only question now was how far they'd go to get what they thought they deserved by birthright. I didn't know the answer, but I knew one thing for certain. I was done being the one who fixed everything for everyone else. Now it was time to fix my own life. They say silence before a storm is the worst part. They're wrong. It's the first lightning strike that gets you. Mine came 6 days later in the form of a certified letter. Had to sign for it and everything. The postal worker gave me that sympathetic look reserved for people getting served. Inside was a formal lawsuit filed by Kyle Miller against Evan Miller and the Ohio Lottery Commission. My brother was claiming we had an oral family agreement to pool lottery tickets. Said we'd been doing it for years, that this winning ticket was purchased as part of our family tradition. Every word of it was a lie so bold it almost impressed me. But here's the thing about lies in the legal system. They don't need to be true to cause damage. They just need to create doubt. And Kyle's lawsuit did exactly what he intended. The Lottery Commission immediately froze the payout pending resolution. My $212 million went from waiting in the wings to locked in a vault somewhere, with lawyers arguing over who had the keys. Brennan called me within an hour of receiving his copy. His voice was calm, almost amused. Said this happened more than people realized. Family members suddenly remembering agreements that never existed, conversations that never happened, promises nobody made. He told me Kyle had made 3 critical mistakes. First, he'd filed too quickly, showing desperation. Second, he'd included provably false statements about past lottery pools. And third, he'd severely underestimated what we had in our arsenal. The hearing was set for 2 weeks out, expedited, given the amount involved. Those 2 weeks were like living in a pressure cooker. Kyle went full offensive, telling anyone who'd listen about how I was stealing from the family. Posted on Facebook about betrayal and greed, though he was careful never to mention specifics. Mom called crying every night until I stopped answering. Dad left voicemails about family loyalty that I deleted without listening. Even cousins I hadn't talked to since high school suddenly had opinions about what I owed the family. But while they were making noise, Brennan was building a case. He hired a private investigator who found some interesting things about Kyle's finances. Turns out Mr. Successful Real Estate Agent was drowning in debt. 3 mortgages, 2 car loans, and credit cards maxed to the tune of $80,000. His lifestyle was a house of cards, and he needed my windfall to keep it from collapsing. The day of the hearing, I walked into that courtroom in my only suit, the one I bought for Grandpa's funeral 5 years ago. Kyle showed up in what looked like $1,000 of tailored confidence, Brittany on his arm like an accessory. My parents sat behind him. They couldn't look at me. Good. I couldn't look at them either. Kyle's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a close-knit family that shared everything, including lottery dreams. He actually used the phrase, blood is thicker than water, 3 times. Talked about how I'd promised to share any winnings, how we'd always bought tickets together, how this was a betrayal of sacred family trust. Kyle even got on the stand, fake tears and all, talking about how hurt he was that his little brother would do this to the family. Then it was our turn. Brennan stood up slowly, straightened his tie, and said 9 words that set the tone for everything that followed. He said the defense would rely entirely on evidence, not emotions. The judge actually leaned forward. First exhibit, security footage from the Shell station. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m., the night of the storm. The whole courtroom watched me change that tire in the downpour, watched Mrs. Whitaker go inside, watched the cashier hand me the envelope. Brennan asked Kyle if their alleged family lottery pool included helping strangers at 3 a.m. Kyle stammered something about that not being relevant. The judge disagreed. Next up was Tommy, the cashier. Kid was nervous, kept tugging at his collar, but his testimony was solid gold. He confirmed Mrs. Whitaker bought the ticket specifically as a thank you gift. She'd asked him which numbers were lucky, and he'd suggested a quick pick. She'd said it was for the kind young man who'd helped her. When Brennan asked if she'd mentioned anything about a family lottery pool, Tommy actually laughed, said she called me an angel sent by God, not a member of a lottery syndicate. But the knockout punch was Mrs. Whitaker herself. Nobody expected her to show up. She was 83 years old, had driven 2 hours with her granddaughter to be there, walked in with a cane, but her head held high. When she took the stand, the entire courtroom went silent. You could have heard a penny drop. She spoke for exactly 12 minutes, told the story of that night, how scared she'd been, how I'd appear like an answer to a prayer, how I'd refuse her money, refused even a thank you, just told her to get to her granddaughter safely. Then she looked directly at Kyle and said something I'll never forget. She said in her 83 years, she'd seen a lot of greed dressed up as love, but this was the first time she'd seen someone try to sue over a thank you card. Because that's what the lottery ticket was. A thank you card that happened to be worth $200 million. The judge asked Kyle's lawyer if he had any questions for Mrs. Whitaker. The man actually stood up, then sat back down. What was he going to do? Attack an elderly woman who'd given away a fortune out of gratitude? Brennan could have stopped there. Should have, probably. We'd already won. But he had one more card to play, and it was an ace. He asked the judge for permission to submit one final piece of evidence. Security footage from my apartment complex, specifically from my Ring doorbell camera. The date stamp was from the night of the family intervention. The footage was crystal clear. There was Kyle and Brittany 40 minutes after they'd left, coming back with Kyle's spare key, the one I'd given him years ago for emergencies. The camera caught everything. Them searching through my mail, my drawers, my closet. Kyle actually held up my bank statement to the light, like he was checking for hidden numbers. Brittany went through my laptop bag, pulled out papers, took photos with her phone. They spent 23 minutes ransacking my apartment, looking for evidence of the lottery win. The courtroom was dead silent. Kyle's face went from red to white to green like a traffic light, having a breakdown. Brittany actually tried to leave, but the bailiff suggested she might want to stay. The judge's expression was something between disgust and fascination, like he was watching a nature documentary about parasites. Brennan asked Kyle one question. Just one. He asked if breaking into someone's apartment was also part of their family lottery tradition. Kyle's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. The Golden Boy real estate agent was just a common burglar in an expensive suit. The judge's ruling came swift and harsh. Not only did he dismiss Kyle's claim as entirely without merit, he called it a frivolous lawsuit designed to extort money through family emotional manipulation. He used words like unconscionable and predatory, and my personal favorite, morally bankrupt. Then he did something I didn't expect. He referred the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges regarding the breaking and entering, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. The gavel came down like thunder. Case dismissed with prejudice, meaning Kyle could never file this claim again. The Lottery Commission was ordered to release the funds immediately. I'd won, but sitting there, watching my family file out without a word, without even a glance back, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like an orphan with a really large bank account. Kyle got 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. The local newspaper had a field day with it. Real estate agents fortune hunt lands and behind bars. His real estate license was suspended, his company folded, and he had to sell everything to cover legal fees. Last I heard, he was working at a car rental place near the airport. Brittany got 18 months probation and 200 hours of community service. The judge called her a willing accomplice in a scheme to defraud. She moved back in with her parents in Indiana, never tried to contact me again. After taxes and taking a lump sum, I had $105 million. First thing I did was buy Mrs. Whitaker a house. Nothing crazy, just a nice 3-bedroom ranch closer to her granddaughter. She cried when I gave her the keys, said I didn't need to do that. I told her she'd given me more than money. She'd given me clarity about who deserved to be in my life. My parents tried reaching out after Kyle went to jail. Mom sent a letter saying they'd been manipulated, that Kyle had convinced them I was in trouble. Dad left a voicemail about how blood is blood, and we needed to move past this. My sister Megan, who'd stayed neutral through the whole thing, called asking if I could help with Mom's medical bills. I told her to send me the invoices directly from the hospital. I'd pay them, but there would be no cash changing hands, no personal meetings, everything through lawyers and accountants. Those were my new boundaries, tall and thick as prison walls. I kept working for about a month, still showing up to FedEx, still fixing things around town, not because I needed the money, but because I needed the normal, needed to remember who I was before the numbers changed. But eventually, I had to accept that chapter was over. Can't sort packages and fix toilets when you're managing $100 million. So I started something new, created the Whitaker Gratitude Fund, a foundation that finds and rewards acts of kindness caught on camera. Not the viral stuff everyone's already seen, but the quiet moments. The person who returns a wallet with cash intact. The teenager who helps an elderly person with groceries. The mechanic who fixes a single mom's car for free. We give out surprise rewards, anything from $1,000 to $50,000, depending on the situation. Running the foundation, I met Claire. She was volunteering, helping verify the authenticity of submitted videos. We spent hours watching footage of human kindness, debating which acts were genuine versus performed for cameras. She had this way of spotting real emotion that I found fascinating. Plus, she didn't know about my money when we met. To her, I was just Evan, the guy who ran a small charity and had strong opinions about what constituted authentic kindness. 6 months later, we were having coffee, going through submissions, when she showed me a video that stopped me cold. It was from a security camera at a grocery store. A man was counting change, coming up short for formula and diapers. The woman behind him quietly told the cashier to add it to her bill. No fuss, no waiting for thanks. She just paid and left. Claire said this was exactly what we looked for, kindness without audience. I agreed, then told her my story. All of it. The tire, the lottery, the trial, everything. She listened without interrupting, then asked one question. She asked if I ever regretted stopping that night in the rain. I told her it was the only thing in my whole story I was absolutely certain about. We've been together 2 years now. She keeps me honest, calls me out when I'm being stupid with money, reminds me where it came from. We live in a nice but not ridiculous house outside Columbus. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, the kind of place Grandpa would have called respectable. No mansion, no fleet of sports cars, no yacht. Just a good life built on a foundation that started with changing a tire in the rain. People ask if I forgive my family. Wrong question. Forgiveness implies they understand what they did wrong, and they don't. To them, I'm still the villain who kept family money for himself. The right question is whether I miss them. Yeah, I do. But I miss the family I thought I had, the one that existed before money revealed the truth. $212 million bought me something priceless. Clarity. I learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about showing up in the rain. It's about changing tires for strangers when nobody's watching. My grandfather was right, just not in the way he probably meant. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. But sometimes the universe is watching, and sometimes it rewards you for simply being decent when decency wasn't required. Every morning, I check the foundation submissions, doorbell cameras, security footage, dash cams, all capturing these little moments of grace. Each one reminds me of that night on Route 35. That moment was worth more than all the money in my account, because that moment was real. Everything else, the lawsuits, the family drama, the millions, that's just what happened after. The money didn't make me rich. That night in the rain did. The money just helped me understand the difference.